keys in a prediction, Ohio State. Number one, I think you got to win the QB pressure battle. Both of these teams get after the quarterback really well. One of these offensive lines has been outstanding protecting the passer. One of them, not so much. You got to protect Quinn if you're Texas. They're the one that hasn't. They've given up 33 sacks this season. It's one of the worst in the country. It's over 2 sacks a game through 15 games. And it's something that's happened a lot. It's not something to me that's just real fluky. I would say, however, that the majority of those sacks, not the majority of them, almost half of those sacks, 13 of those sacks were given up to the Georgia Bulldogs in 2 games. But I think it's a problem. I mean, I don't think I'm not sitting here like scared in my boots that Ohio State is just going to absolutely destroy the Texas offensive line. But I think it's something to watch. It's definitely a key they have to protect. Ohio State got 47 sacks on the season, one of the best in the country. We all know Quinn when he's got time, he is deadly. He is precise. He knows where to get the ball. He's accurate. But when he feels a little pressure, sometimes he struggles with his mechanics. Sometimes he struggles with his decision making. And those two things lead to inaccuracy and they lead to mistakes. And something you cannot have in a game of this magnitude is a lot of mistakes. This has got to be a game where Texas plays pretty clean on offense, I think, if they want to come out of there with a W. I think this Ohio State front seven is a really big challenge for this Texas offensive line. Again, I was on with the world's strongest man, Mark Henry, and Hardball Harge of AM 1300 The Zone last night. We were talking a little bit Cotton Bowl. We didn't have a lot of time, man. We had some technical difficulties, so we didn't get on time. And then they had a hard stop at 6. So we didn't get to get into everything I wanted to talk about. But one of the things Big Mark Henry said multiple times was if he was coaching this Texas team, he would challenge that offensive line. He's all about establishing the run in this game, and I kind of agree with him. I mean, maybe not to the point that he wants to do it. He said, "I'm running the ball 3 straight times to start the game." I don't know about that, but I think you got to come out if you're Texas offensively and establish that run. It certainly needs to be able to hold up in pass protection. We talked in the deep dive about how Ohio State really likes to get a lot of pressure with the front four and play a lot of coverage behind it, but they will bring blitzes from a lot of different places. We also talked about how they remind me a lot of that Georgia front seven. Really athletic, really damn big, powerful, long. Just they're all sort of freak athletes, just like you see out of the really good Georgia teams, like we saw out of those really good Alabama teams in the past. If this Texas offensive line can rise up to that challenge and play to their potential, because folks, they're damn good. I know they've had some injuries. I know there was the Georgia games where they weren't that great. At times, at other times they were really good. I thought the first half of the SEC championship game, the offensive line held up pretty damn well. But if they can rise up and meet that challenge of that Ohio State front seven and make that a wash, even, I think Texas has a good shot at winning this game. On the flip side, if you're the Texas defense, you got to affect Will Howard. Ohio State's only given up 12 sacks all season. That's got to be one of the. It's up there with the best. It may be the best. Less than 1 a game. I mean, I don't know how you don't just accidentally luck into a sack at some point. So I feel like 12 sacks has got to be one of the best in the country. Texas sacking the QB 45 times this season. Absolutely one of the best in the country. And for Texas, it's not just the sacks. This defense has pestered quarterbacks all season long. We saw 20, I think it was over 20 QB hurries last week in the Peach Bowl against Arizona State. They were after Sam Levitt from jump. Sam Levitt's a really good athlete, was able to make some plays out of that. Will Howard, I don't think, is not an athlete. I don't think he's on the same level running around. He's not the same kind of guy with his legs that Sam Levitt is. And Will Howard can be rattled, folks. Michigan did it. Texas has done it in the past when he was at Kansas State. And it's the same Will Howard, y'all. We said that the other day. This is not some magical new Will Howard. This is just Will Howard behind an offensive line that keeps him upright, keeps him clean, and he's got some of the best weapons in the country to get the ball to. But if you can get to him, you can rattle him. Obviously, when he's got time, he's good enough to find open guys, deliver the ball. We said, we said the other day, this guy isn't like, he's not pinpoint lasering stuff in there between 2 and 3 defenders. He's not that guy, but he doesn't have to be because the weapons they have, those guys are getting open or they're pseudo open, meaning like I can just get the ball elevated a little bit, and I know Jeremiah Smith's just going to go up, out jump the defender, catch the ball. But when Will Howard is under pressure, you go back to that Michigan game, he's a mess. Like most quarterbacks, we say this all the time. We start talking about individual quarterbacks. We say, oh, when they're under pressure, they're a mess. I don't know a lot of quarterbacks that aren't a mess when they're under pressure. I'm not 1,000% sure that that's a fair metric to judge quarterbacks. It's just really hard to not be a mess when you're running for your life. You can't see down the field because you're trying not to get tackled. I think the average Joe, and I've never played quarterback, but I think the average Joe has no idea of two things about big time football. And I'll include high school in that as well. One, the game is so much faster than you can possibly imagine. And two, those guys can't see everything you can see. You're sitting in the stands. I know our tickets are in 106, the first like row 13, I think, at Darrell K. Royal. So I'm high above, looking down on the field. I see all kinds of stuff. I don't expect Quinn Ewers to see what I just saw. Nonetheless, this Texas defense can get after Will Howard and get him a little rattled early. I think that bodes really well for Texas, not only the defense itself, but for the whole outcome of the game. One of the things I think we should be watching for tomorrow is that chess match between PK and Chip Kelly, and specifically what PK throws at Ohio State to try to disrupt Will Howard. I mean, I think we all know PK's philosophy is kind of, hey man, we're just going to get to you with four. We don't blitz a lot. It's honestly not too complex when they do blitz. They rely on that front four to get a lot of pressure and be relentless, a lot like Ohio State. So what happens if that front four can't get pressure? What does PK do then? I think to me that's kind of like certainly one of the games inside the game is what that looks like. Key number two, you got to stay balanced on offense if you're Texas. And I don't necessarily mean production. I'm not saying we got to have 200 yards passing, 200 yards rushing. I really mean attempts. And it doesn't have to be exact. I'm not saying 30 passing attempts, 30 rushing attempts, but I think it has to be reasonable. It has to be enough rushing attempts that Ohio State is kept off balance and they can't just sit back, pin their ears back, and come after Quinn Ewers. This Ohio State defense made a living all season, stopping the run early, waiting for the offense to get a lead, and then feasting on the opposing offensive line, feasting on the opposing quarterbacks in the pass game. I don't think Texas is going to be all that successful running the ball tomorrow. If they are, all bets are off. This is a game. If Texas can be successful running the football tomorrow, this is a game that is easily winnable for Texas. But I don't expect that to happen. I think this Ohio State defense, the absolute best rushing defense that they'll have faced all season. But I think Sark has to find a way to incorporate the running game into the play calling enough to keep Ohio State off balance so that when he does want to take shots, he's got that at his disposal. These Ohio State safeties love to come up and support the run. That's something Texas can take advantage of if they've run the ball consistently enough for play action to be a credible threat. I think one of the knocks on Sark has been, this is not just me, this is folks, third party folks that have no reason to like Texas or dislike Texas. Sort of the knock the last few seasons has been when the run game just isn't ultra explosive, he gets away from it sometimes. We saw it in the Clemson game. They rushed the ball 60% of the snaps in the first half against Clemson. In the third quarter, I think it was the next 3 drives of the game, 43%. Why? You just ran the ball all over Clemson. Why would you come out of the locker room and do something different? And I get, oh, we think the other team is going to make an adjustment. Probably. Find out. I think if Texas goes into this game tomorrow and finds itself in a situation where Quinn Ewers throwing the ball 40 plus times and they just completely abandon the run, Texas is going to lose. Well, we've seen that game already this season. We've seen it twice. Both of them losses to Georgia. Quinn Ewers over 40 attempts, just an absolute refusal to even attempt to run the football. It's not going to work. And again, folks, I don't even care if they're not successful. And by successful, I mean I'm not saying if we're picking up 5-yard losses every time we hand it off, let's keep doing it. I'm just saying we've seen us run the ball for 2-3 yards, sometimes 4 yards a pop, and then just get away from it because it's not 50-yard touchdown run. If you're picking up positive yardage with the run game tomorrow night, if you're Texas, you got to keep doing it. And that may mean sometimes we run 5-6 plays, maybe we pick up a first down, maybe we pick up a first down or two, and then we have to punt it. That's okay. What's not okay is just completely getting away from it. I say there's no chance for them to win. I don't think it's 0, but I would be shocked if they get themselves into a situation like that tomorrow night and they win that football game. I think Sark has to be willing to stay patient. He's always talking about trust the process. I think Sark needs to trust the process of grinding out a game against a tough opponent. He's got to be willing to do that. If he does that against Georgia twice, they beat Georgia twice. They're an undefeated football team right now. And like I said, if they do have success running the football tomorrow night, pound that rock. Do not stop. Let them stop you a series before you go and change your mind and decide we need to do something different. Maybe that's old school thinking. I don't know. I did play high school football at a place where we ran the ball 99% of the time, probably higher than that. I just feel like there's nothing more demoralizing than as a defense of A, not knowing what's coming, and B, when the run does come, it's just methodical, and they just never stop. I mean, go back and look at the Peach Bowl. Cam Scatterboot really couldn't do much in that first half running the football. And it just kind of kept leaning on Texas and leaning on Texas. And eventually they started picking up some yards. Starting getting some plays, started getting into some explosive run plays. 12 yards or more. Speaking of explosives, key number 3, big plays. Big plays play such a huge factor in college football. The greatest of all time, Nick Saban, says the biggest predictor in any game outside of turnovers is explosive plays. If you're Texas, you got to limit that Ohio State explosive offense They have absolutely lived off of explosive plays in this playoff so far. They got at least 10 of them through 2 games. And I could not find a place to go. I could have. I could have went and looked at every single play they played in both of those games to tally it. I didn't feel like that was necessary. I felt like that was an extreme waste of my time. So what I did do was I went and looked at the individual stats and counted up all the longs. And there were 10 longs in each of those two, not in each of those two, combined in those two playoff games of runs over 12 and passes over 20. Ohio State scored 21 points in the first quarter, both of those games. Texas got to be able to limit that and force Ohio State to be patient, drive the field methodically. We all know that's hard. I think there's two huge factors with that today in college football. One, it's hard. It's just hard to get people not to jump off sides and not to have motion penalties and not to line up in the wrong spot and not to give up a sack. And, it's just hard to do that up and down the field consistently. Two, I don't think there's a whole lot of offensive guys anymore that have patience for that at all. So Texas defensively, limit that, and I think you got a good shot. If you're Texas offense, you got to hit those big plays. Texas has 33 more plays of over 20 yards this season than Ohio State does. Texas, one of the most explosive offenses in the country if you're just looking at explosive plays. They've had opportunities to do it all season, and they certainly will tomorrow night have opportunities to get the ball down the field. In the passing game, you got to hit them. You got to hit it. I mean, more than any other game this season, Quinn Ewers has to be able to deliver the football in a catchable manner to guys running down the field. We've seen him be good at it at times this year. We've seen him struggle with it. He's probably struggled with it more than he's been good at it. He's just got to get it close and give those guys a chance. I mean, the difference in this game could be in an inaccurate pass, or two, or three, or four, or whatever. I have no doubt that Texas's outside guys can get down the field on this Ohio State defense. And I think this Texas offensive line will hold up good enough in pass pro that sometimes Quinn Ewers will have time to deliver the football to those guys. He's got to get it out there in a catchable manner. And then I think if Texas can add some explosive plays in the running game, I think Texas can win this game. Key number 4, you got to win third down. We always talk about the money downs on this show. Third down is going to be pretty crucial in this game, I think. Texas better converting third downs and better at stopping teams from converting third downs. You got to make your strengths your strengths. We talk about that every single week on this show in this segment, 4 keys. If you got a decided strength against an opponent, you got to keep it as a strength. You can't turn it into a weakness of yours. We've seen Texas do that a little bit this year. I think both these offenses are going to find themselves in third down a lot in this game. So I think whichever team can figure out a way to convert those third downs more consistently and then obviously get off the field on third down, this is going to win the game. I mean, you win games by extending drives. Bonus key, win the beginning of each half. We talked just a second ago about Ohio State scoring 21 points in the first quarter of both of their college football playoff games. 42 points in the first quarter through 2 games for Ohio State. They held their opponents to 0 points in the first quarter of both of those games. So they got a 42-0 point differential in first quarters of the college football playoffs. Texas scored 17 first quarter points and only allowed 6 through 2 playoff games. So if you're Texas, you absolutely we say it in the past, be the storm. You know, people talk about surviving the storm. You got to survive the storm. I hate that. I don't think you got to survive shit. I think you want to go be the storm. Go be the team that wins the first quarter. Don't be the team that loses the first quarter, but at least it wasn't that bad. At least it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Texas offensively been absolutely abysmal in the third quarter this season. I think they have 6 points in their last 6 third quarters total. Check me on that, but I think that's accurate. So if Texas can go out there and win first quarter and third quarter, we talk about situational football. We're talking about it with Harge and Mark Henry last night. You got to win right before the end of the half. Excuse me. You got to win right when you come out of half. And those final few minutes of the fourth quarter, you got to win. You win those, you win football games.